Hello and welcome to Venue Diagram. I'm Clay, and today I'm really excited to take you on a tour of Rogers Centre in Toronto, Canada. This is my first time actually visiting Toronto, and I must say it was a super exciting time. It was very fun. I had a great time. I met up with some friends, did a bunch of touring around the city, but I've always been super excited to visit Rogers Centre because the Braves played the Blue Jays back in the '92 World Series, and even though it was Sky Dome back then, and there have been changes over the course of time, the place always looked really interesting. It has the hotel out in the outfield, it has the retractable roof, and so it was always an interesting place, and it's also in Canada, so it's an international visit. So let's just jump into it. First things first, a little bit of history of the stadium. The Rogers Centre was opened in 1989 and is the home of the Toronto Blue Jays. It is the first stadium that had the fully retractable roof, and that was a really key thing. And I must say, even now, it works really well. So the roof was open when I was there, but it seemed like it could change pretty quickly if necessary. It just has this really nice feel to it. The sky was open and it was very bright and happy. It was a nice place to catch a game. It felt like an open air stadium. Even when the roof is closed, it doesn't feel as contracted and terrible as some of them do. And again, for someone with some of the sensory issues that I have, you want that, right? Like as you're coming into a place, you don't want to feel trapped inside of it. And I must say, I've been inside of Tropicana Field, and you feel trapped inside of that place. I don't have a venue diagram visit set up for Tropicana Field yet, but someday soon it will be happening, and I gotta say, it's not gonna be high on the list, right? But this is about Rogers Centre, and I will say about Rogers Centre all the way back to 1989, through the 1992 World Series, and through all of the changes and upgrades and all of that stuff since then. The feel of Rogers Centre has always felt nice. And one of the great things about it is I like Toronto. I like the city. I like the feel of the city. I like the look of the teams. It's one of those places where the teams have kind of a through line to their team identities. And so the Blue Jays have the blue nature to their uniforms, which has this kind of great unique blue color, and it has that like 1980s vibe to the way that everything looks, the fonts, and it really ties in well to the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs also have that blue color, and it has that like Toronto feel to it. You feel like you're in Toronto sports when you're at a Toronto sporting event, and I love that. I love that you can have that like city identity. I wanted to focus more on the actual sensory experience that I've been having at these venue visits. That way, if you are joining the channel for actually dedicatedly listening for tips and tricks about visiting stadiums or visiting venues to help with sensory experience, you might be able to get this. I will say that at Rogers Centre, it wasn't overly loud. And I did have my loops in, which is a key part of things for me. And I just don't go to a stadium without my loops, and I definitely recommend them for anybody with sensory issues who's going to a stadium. But I will say, at Rogers Centre, it doesn't have that kind of cacophonous, overwhelming sound thing that a lot of different stadiums have. The other thing that I found is very helpful was the spaciousness. There was a lot of room inside of these corridors. Everything was open, and I think this was a part of being in Canada. There were not like backed up lines everywhere. Even coming into the stadium, there was no backup at security. You just walked straight through. There were scanners to make sure you weren't bringing anything into the stadium, but it was fast. It was the fastest entry into a stadium that I have had in any of the visits that I've done, and it was amazing. There was no issue in any sense of any place, and it seemed like the place was empty. I thought that there were maybe 200 people there when I arrived, and I did arrive early. I always arrive early, but there were already probably 15,000 people there, but you couldn't tell. It was great. So everyone was already in their seats, or they had other things to do, which is what you need at a stadium, especially when you have sensory issues, things like that, there need to be things for people to do. There need to be areas for kids to go hang out, differing food areas, differing experiences. There was this great carnival band. They had different parts around the stadium where there were like drummers playing. You could go to watch them. Some of the ladies from the group were dancing on the field. A couple of guys from the group were dancing up in the concourse level. It was just a different place where you could get a different experience on all kinds of different parts of the stadium. And that allowed the crowd to be dispersed where nobody was crowded up in any one area. And that was really essential to making sure that there wasn't anything overwhelming from a sensory perspective. Now, let's talk food. So as some of you who may have watched my last video, I did talk a lot about the gluten-free options at Citi Field, and check out that video if you haven't, because those options are amazing. There was nothing quite to that level at Rogers Center, but it did have some gluten-free options. The first thing that I must say, though, is as usual, website is out of date. The website options that said were available took you to the World's Fair Market, but the World's Fair Market that existed and had gluten-free options listed on the website did not exist. So I had to go to the customer service desk, and again, another digression, it's something that I don't normally actually enjoy doing, is going to the customer service area at a ballpark or anywhere, because I like to try to get through things on my own, and as you know, is often the case with someone with some of these anxiety issues, it becomes very difficult to speak to people who are unknown about these things, especially since I don't know exactly what it is I want to ask. So I have some issues making sure that I have the right questions to be able to ask the right questions. But both of the people that I talked to at Rogers Center were fantastic. They both were, if I were giving out ratings on service, they were 5 out of 5, absolutely. And they pointed me to two different gluten-free options. One was snow fries from Fry Stand, which was right beside where they were working. And I did go over there and check that out. And I ordered them, but I was uncertain that they were actually gluten-free. So again, it said they were gluten-free in some of the material, but that stand did actually sell chicken tenders as well, and I was worried that the snow fries were cooked in the same fryer with the chicken tenders, and I didn't want to risk it. So some people may be willing to risk it. Clearly, the snow fries themselves were not gluten-y, but if you're super sensitive, you may definitely not want to do it. It certainly was not a gluten-free facility by any stretch of the imagination. And it is possible that they use a dedicated fryer. It said that they used a dedicated fryer, but then I didn't see a dedicated fryer once I got there. So I ordered them, and then I kind of just didn't eat them. But the place that I did get gluten-free food was all the way at the back of the outfield. Over by where the drummers were playing was a really nice California fusion Asian area. And oddly enough, it was cash only, but I paid cash and got this chicken meal, which was gluten-free and was quite good. And so if you are traveling to Rogers Center, there are gluten-free options, at least at this one area, and probably a couple other areas. We looked through the options, and I think a couple of the restaurants had gluten-free food as well. But definitely this place in the 110 section out in the outfield, probably the snow fries, and definitely a couple of the restaurants. So gluten-free options are available. Not Citi Field level with the great World's Fair Market level of options, but still definitely some stuff that can get you through the day. Moving on, I love to talk a little bit about the actual experience of the game itself. And so here are some highlights from the game itself. Now, for the first time on the channel, I did not actually see the Braves playing in this game, but I did get to see the Blue Jays
versus the Rangers.
and they had a pretty fun game in this little experience that we had going on here. Overall, really great experience of a ball game, and I was really close down here. You see again on the first base line, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about my seat. I didn't love this seat, and the issue here was about the angles. So when I'm in this seat, to see the pitcher, pretty easy. To see out at first base and out into the outfield is all great. But to actually see the pitch go over the plate, it involved actually turning and looking over to the left in order to see that. And it was really a lot of effort and a lot of craning and all of those things. I mean, it was a great seat. As you can see, it's really close to the field. It's right on top of everything. But it's not a seat that I would probably choose in the future. As I've said to several people, I think I prefer to be behind the plate and higher up if I need to be, out of the super expensive seats that are right behind the plate, close down. I'd say basically everything down the first baseline. When you can see both the pitcher and the catcher at the same time, I think is what's key for me. Again, I want to see the game. That's the biggest thing for me. If I happen to go to a baseball game, I want to be able to see the baseball game happening. And the most essential part of a baseball game happening is the pitcher and the catcher, because that's the chess match that's happening out there, right? Is what's the pitch? What's the batter going to do? And then if you see what happens after the ball's hit, that's amazing. You want to see it, but that's less important than actually seeing the pitch itself and how it interacts as it's going over the plate and all of that stuff. Anyway, I'd like to kind of wrap everything up with a couple key points. I'm going to call this my big three and bottom three, right? So let's do bottom three first, because I like to get the negatives out of the way before I get into the positives. And the bottom three things about Rogers Center would be, number one, that there's not a dedicated gluten-free area. I really think that a dedicated gluten-free area, kind of like they have at Citi Field, is the wave of the future and what would be really helpful at these stadiums. Again, almost nobody has it. It's not like it's the worst thing in the world that Rogers Center doesn't have this, but it would be really awesome if they could move in that direction. Number two is that website updates need to be more accurate and faster. That way, when you go and actually see what it is you're trying to order at the stadium, would really love it if that would be what you could actually get when you get there. Number three, I actually think would be another big improvement that all places could get, and that's a way to give this type of feedback directly to the stadium. Because I was talking to the people there at the stadium, and they did not have any idea that the website was not updated. They did not have any idea that the gluten-free area was no longer at the place. I had just come from there, and they looked on the website and were going to send me back to the place that I had just come from. So that's my third thing, is to be able to give the best feedback back to the stadium. I would love it if we could get all those things done. But my big three, the three things that I think that Rogers Center does spectacularly. Number one, and has to be the absolute best, is getting people into the stadium. It was spectacular. I just walked right in. It was amazing. There were, like I said, already 15 to 20,000 people in the stadium. It was an hour before the game started. It was like nobody was there. It was clear. It was amazing. Number two, there are things to do before the game starts. You can go around. You don't have to be crowded up. You're not on top of each other. It's nice and open and smooth and cool and just feels great. And number three, the staff there is incredibly friendly. I know that Canadians have a reputation for being kind and for all of the generosity and all of those things. It's a stereotype that if you have it, you want to keep it. And so Rogers Center definitely keeps it. And so there you go. That is Venue Diagram's visit to Rogers Center. So I'd say especially to be mindful of your gluten-free needs if you decide to go to Rogers Center, to be prepared to have to look around a little bit to find the food that you want. I don't know that what I got at The area out in the outfield is always there. It may not be what you want. There wasn't a gigantic amount of selection. The one chicken meal that I got was really the only thing that they had, and I did have to take out some things that I don't really like out of it, but they weren't gluten-y things. It was just like some weird like sauce stuff that I don't enjoy. Again, I'll talk more about my other types of sensitivities in future videos, but otherwise, Rogers Center knocked it out of the park. So if you do head to Toronto, and I do suggest you do, Toronto is a fantastic city, one of the great cities. Please head to Toronto, head to Rogers Center, check it out, and next time you're on YouTube, please come back to Venue Diagram. We'd love to see you here.